Welcome to the Hey Chaplain podcast. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. Hey Chaplain is an officer wellness podcast produced for cops and covers topics like your career, your wellness, and law enforcement culture. On Hey Chaplain, you'll hear from dispatchers and federal agents, sheriffs, and U.S. Marshals, as well as the occasional patrol officer from my hometown of Kansas City. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain share their own wisdom so that police officers everywhere can survive and thrive. Welcome back to part 2 of my interview with Ryan Miller about leadership at the sergeant's level. We're assuming that in most police departments, a relatively small number of patrol officers are supervised by a sergeant or two, who themselves have to answer to a lieutenant or a captain. A new sergeant could possibly be as young as his or her mid-20s, but they may be supervising fellow officers who could be 30 years their senior, or maybe as young as 21, which is a common minimum age for police officers in the United States. In this episode, Ryan is going to talk about leading officers across that wide spectrum of different ages. He's also going to talk about how to balance your new administrative responsibilities with leading in the field, as well as having some good advice about how to handle the situation when an officer is likely going to get fired. Don't miss that good tactic that Ryan's FTO taught him for how to supervise from a short distance away, which Ryan calls kickin rocks. If you haven't listened to part 1 of this interview, you don't necessarily have to listen to them in order because we cover so many different topics, but you definitely want to listen to them both. And share these episodes with other sergeants and other officers who aspire to be supervisors. We want the best people with the best guidance to lead our police officers. Here's Ryan Miller. Let me ask you about another dichotomy. You have people you're supervising, some of which are brand new, wet behind the ears, green rookies. But you have others that are 10, 15-year veteran cops who maybe have been on the force longer than you have. What are the needs and dynamics between those two different groups? I mean, that's leading to completely different type of officers.
Mm-hmm. We've all heard lead from the front. You've also heard ships are guided from the back, the rudders in the back. Right. Well, I learned through almost 17 years on the SWAT team that my theory of lead from the middle has worked for me.
Okay.
And in that particular case, when you're in the middle, you can see what's going on up front, and those that are experts at what's up there, let them do their job. You can see left and right, you can hear left and right, you can hear the front, and you can see the back. Mm-hmm. If you lead from the front, which is an admirable place to be, you can't always see what's going on in the back. Yeah. Okay, so take that theory of you're up front, well, that's also where all the go fast people are, more aggressive people, and it's fun to be with them, right? But you're leaving people behind.
Be alienated from them.
Yep. Thank you. But if you're in the middle, you can work with those and give them their due attention as well.
So regardless of your own disposition, you need to position yourself where you can reach both types of officers.
Right. Okay. You can see the right, the left, the front, and the back. And so when you're in the middle, you can now reach those that are further into their career and see what their needs are and think about what they need. You can see the younger officers and what are they thinking and what do they need and that kind of thing. So another good example is I had a discussion with a young sergeant that was not saying kind words about a senior sergeant who was approximately 30 years older than he was. And the argument was those two sergeants should be able to do exactly the same thing, perform exactly the same way, be evaluated the same way. And I said, okay, I got it, because you're both sergeants, or
you're of equal rank.
Yeah, you're equal rank, and you're in similar shifts, and so you should. However, let me remind you, he is in a different stage of his life than you are. He literally thinks differently than you do. He has older children that he's worried about where they're going. His wife is older, and what is her life like, and what he's looking at retirement, and what's he going to do next, and the nervousness of what is the next chapters in life. Yeah. And you're worried about babies, and you're worried about a young wife and buying a house, and where's my career going to go? I've got this 25-year career that now it's in front of me, and I'm trying to find my way. And so I had this conversation, and it came down to one anecdote. And it was literally about getting in and out of the car and the setup of a police car. And the young sergeant thinks that you fling that door open and you pop right out of that car. And so therefore the setup of the car makes no difference. But when you're north of 50, you're not popping out of that car and taking off running.
Right.
And so the setup of the car has to be conducive to both. Okay. So take that. Your leadership has to be conducive to both.
Yeah.
You have to be able to speak to the one that's young and aggressive and hasn't thought of what retirement's like yet, couldn't care less. They probably barely even putting any money in their account, kind of a thing. But then you also have to be able to lead someone that is on the brink of retirement and still trying to get productive work out of them and speaking to them as well. So a young sergeant, it's tougher because if they have senior officers, they don't know what that's like. A senior sergeant does know what it's like to be young, right? They always know that. But if you're a young sergeant and you have senior people around you, respect their experiences, respect where they're at in life.
How do you do that when they might not have been trained on a particular procedure or piece of equipment, and you have more current training than they have, but they've got 10 years more experience? How do you say that gently that, we don't actually use it that way anymore, or we don't use this type of equipment anymore, or whatever it is? How do you do that?
You start with respect.
Okay.
You even at my rank, at higher level rank, senior command rank, I could still go to a senior officer, and I'm thinking of one right now, and I would still respect the fact that he's been in this game longer than I have, and he's seen more than I have. Now, have I heard more? Personnel issues and all that kind of stuff? Yes. Do I have a broader view of the whole department? Maybe. But they've been here a long time. I still will respect them, sometimes say yes, sir, to them.
Right.
Show them respect. And once you get that mutual respect, now you can tell them, hey, I need you to do it this way now. Yeah. And, well, why do we have to do it that way? Well, because of these reasons. Now you have to be armed with those reasons.
Give them those reasons.
Right. You have to be armed with those reasons.
Yeah, you don't tell a 50-year-old because I said so.
No.
Yeah.
No, because older ones, another good piece of advice is the older ones have learned they'll just wait you out.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Or they're in a career that they're tenured, they're vested, and they can see the finish line and you ain't doing anything about it.
Yeah.
And so they'll wait you out. Cops are experts at waiting you out because we cycle so much.
Yeah.
And so you have to seize your opportunity to reach them. And in my opinion, that starts with showing them the respect that they deserve for being in this for so long. And then you can start to work with them.
With younger officers, what are you seeing? I mean, things change. I mean, police generations are shorter than generations in the civilian world. And so things change every 5 or 10 years, things change. What are you seeing that makes it difficult for supervisors in these young 22, 23-year-old officers?
Makes them difficult to lead?
Yeah.
Well, they're distracted.
Really? In what way?
The younger officers are more distracted. There's more in their life that can take away their attention. It's usually in their hand.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's a handheld device that we're all familiar with, and we all use it, but we all use it differently. They're more connected, which is good and bad. They can reach out to each other through technology. We've had officers actually do Google Meets while en route to a call, which you think that's crazy. You can't be watching a video while you're going to the call. And we ask them about it, and they go, we're not watching each other, but we're talking to each other through the call as we go.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Interesting use of technology.
It's use of technology.
Yeah.
And certainly in one way, okay.
Right.
But in other ways, let's not do that. Right?
The negative is that they're just so distracted.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this generation seems to be more distracted. We are really coming out of the COVID fog when for 2 years we told them, hands off, don't do anything.
Don't be proactive.
Don't be making car stops.
Right.
Even though you may not be scared of anything, the general public is. But then what do we see? Crime rates are going up as proactivity goes down.
And you've conditioned young, impressionable officers not to be proactive.
Right. And if they can go sit in the parking lot, they'll go sit in the parking lot. Not all of them, and not a majority of them. but
it's something that didn't exist in 2005.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Again, you had a newspaper, magazine, or the radio.
Right.
That's all you had. And,
Yeah.
and man, I'm making myself sound old here. I don't feel like it. But they're distracted. And however, on the positive side, this generation, it's important to them to have their free time. It's important to them to have their time off.
Okay.
And the older generation is work, work, work. Right? We were taught by the greatest generation of the baby boomers, you work your way through life. But then we find out that leads to burnout, that leads to mental health issues,
shortened lifespan, all sorts of
lifespan, and all kinds of the dark side. So it's hard to argue with the fact that they want to have their time off.
Yeah. Their work ethic might be a little less, but they might be healthier down the road. Like 20 years from now, they might be healthier.
Exactly.
So boy, it's tough.
Right now, I would say we are in a phase of leadership is trying to find that balance. And I'll speak for myself. And all it is when you come to work, I want you to work your tail off. And then I want you to go in that locker room, take your uniform off, and go home. And don't be a cop once you leave that building. You're now dad, spouse, father, wife, mother, whatever it might be. You're that now. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't even think about it.
The city will survive without you.
Somebody came in behind you to hold it down for you.
Yeah.
Come back tomorrow. And when you put that uniform on, but now I need you to go back to work.
Yeah.
And put your phone down. Do the things we're asking you to do because your community is paying you to reduce crime and to make their community safe. That's why you're there. And that's why we hired you.
Yeah.
So be a police officer while you're being a police officer. Be a sergeant while you're being a sergeant. When it's over, put it aside, go home.
Yeah.
And stop.
Yeah.
We'll see you tomorrow. The most important thing that sergeant can do for their officers to lead them, that's probably the most important thing. When we go through a process, whether it's sergeant, captain, major, what does a chief want to know? If they only had one thing to evaluate someone on is can they lead? And so if you take everything else away, is for a sergeant, can you lead your people? Can you support them? Can you be there for them? Can you provide them with the advice they need? Can you develop, inspire, motivate, influence? When you're here, lead them and support them. But then also tell them, hey, good job today. Now go home. Be the best you can be at home. Get some rest. Love your family. Whatever it might be. Come back fresh tomorrow and let's do it again.
Okay. Being that leader, what if someone's a newly promoted supervisor, they're a sergeant for the first time, and they've never really had a good, healthy leader in front of them that, modeled that for them? I mean, they're really kind of trying to figure this out on their own. What does being a good leader in a police department look like?
What we would like to see you develop is, first of all, you're going to lead by example. You're going to carry yourself because that's the only place you can start is with yourself. Okay. You can't not work on you and try to tell someone else how to carry themselves, how to fulfill their career, and if you don't have your own act together. Yeah. So have your own act together, whether that's through health, whether that's through study. Always be learning. You should always learn about your profession, know the history of it, know the terminology of it. Know Sir Robert Peel. Know who he is and the Peelian principles, that kind of thing. Okay. So start with yourself. Educate yourself. Go to training. Make yourself as best you can be. That's where you start. Then invest in your people. So we want sergeants as commanders. We want the sergeants to focus on your squad. Do we want you to worry a little bit about the right and the left? Yes. The other shifts? Sure. Worry about it. Work with them because we got to pass things on. But really what we want is for you to focus on your people because your captain's watching your back or your lieutenant or whoever else it might be. Or if you're a corporal out of the squad, then your sergeant's watching your back, whatever your rank structure might be. Start with yourself, then focus on your people. Focus on their development. What's important to them? Where do they want to go? What do they want to be? What type of things do they need to know or get better at? Okay. And let them work between the boundaries and then lead them. Let them know when they've stepped too far left or too far right. Nudge them back into play and keep them on the straight and narrow. So start with yourself and then focus on the people that we have assigned to you, that those are your people. Personal, professional investment in those people right in front of you.
Being a supervisor for the first time means having administrative responsibilities for the first time, typically. How do you prevent just being chained to your desk and spending your entire shift working on admin? How do you fight that? How do you prevent that? How do you balance it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's generally what young supervisors are most worried about, because that's what they don't know, right? They can go to a call and handle a call because they've been doing it for so many years to get to that point, and they've been successful if they're a sergeant.
Yeah.
But then they don't know what they don't know. All of a sudden, they got to do injury reports, and they got to do crash reports on cars, and personnel issues are now come their way, and that kind of thing. So those will tie you to the desk. An organization should give a sergeant freedom to sit down, let their mind clear, sit in a safe environment where they're not having to look left and right, sit in a car, and get some of that work done. However, you can't sit at that desk all the time. You can't sit at that desk for a whole shift. You should not do that. Occasionally, there might be something. You have to. I understand. But
typically, you can't be chained to that desk.
No. And again, go back to technology. Most times these days, a car has a mobile data terminal or a mobile computer in that car. You're going to have to go in the field, go find a parking lot, and sit there, be in service, and work on what you got to work on. Does that mean that
multitask?
Yeah, it means you're in your vest, sitting in a car, twisting, typing on the computer? Yes, you have to balance those things, though, right? You got to get out and walk around, that kind of thing. But you got to be in the field. The officers don't really care if you're out making car stops. You want to do some of that and be out there with them.
Yeah.
But they understand you have other priorities. You have a role. Everyone has a role. Sometimes the officers will let that get blurred, or sergeants will get blurred, and they'll want commanders to come out and chase calls for service and that kind of thing. And maybe in some organizations that's good. In other organizations, that's not good. You don't want the chief chasing calls for service. You want him working on things in the office.
Right.
All the way back down to a sergeant. Sergeant has to understand his role or her role. They are admin and field supervision. You can do both. You can be in the field and do your admin. So you need to rotate those things around. Go to the calls you need to go to some you don't need to go to so they see you. Be in the field, do some of your admin work, approve reports in the field, right? You're really much just reading anyway. Approve your reports in the field. You got forms to fill out. You got reports that you got to write. Maybe you go back to the station and do those there. But again, you have a rotation. You're in, you're out, you're at calls, and you're just moving. Just be on the move.
Because that makes you visible.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you get stuck in your office back at the station, you might be, literally your officers will go 7 or 8 hours, however long their shift is, without seeing you.
Right.
They saw you at that briefing or the roll call, and then they didn't see you again.
And they will notice. They will notice, and they won't call you out on it. You're the superior, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to call you out on it.
Yeah.
They're going to tell each other about it.
Yeah.
Or Sergeant such and such, he or she's never out here. They're never out here. We go in service and we're flying solo out here. Or the other way is,
and that could be good. That could be good or bad.
Could be good or bad.
Right. There's some that don't want supervision, and that's maybe not good for the department.
Right.
And there's some that do want it, and they wish they had more help and more guidance and that kind of thing. Yeah.
When I was an FTO, I learned another leadership trait clear back in the FTO. I was the officer in training, and I had this great FTO who's a wonderful man. I'm still friends with him to this day. And the previous phase, I had an FTO that was right on my shoulder the whole time. He was right behind me, and I'd literally turn around and he's taking notes. And I just, what is he writing down? That was very intimidating. It made me nervous. I wasn't sure if I was doing things right. I went to the next phase, and I had the exact opposite, except he did it just right. And so I have carried this example through my entire career. And my FTO in that phase would let me go up to call, and he'd quietly say, "Hey, I'll be over here if you need me." He'd hang back 10 or 15 feet back. He could hear everything. He'd be kicking rocks. He'd be looking around. He'd be enjoying the evening. He'd be checking his equipment. He'd just do various things that gave the message to the reporting parties or whoever is involved that he's not really plugged in. He's not even he's not here.
Right.
But he's here. He's listening to everything.
Right.
And so I always said, oh, yeah, that's my FTO then, the kicking rock theory. 10 or 15 feet away, kicking rocks, acting like he's not there, but he's listening to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Then I, as the trainee, could handle the call. And I had no intimidation by it. And he'd come back, evaluate me, say, hey, yeah, you did a good job. I did this and this. And I go, wow, he was really picking up on the whole thing. So even in my rank now, I try to give my subordinates that type of space.
Yeah.
Handle your stuff.
Literal and figurative space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Handle your stuff.
Yeah.
When I was a captain, I'd tell the sergeants, handle it.
Yeah.
Handle it. A great leader that I know.
You're not absent. You're still paying attention.
I'm right there.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm aware. And as the captain or as the sergeant, I'd tell, when I was a sergeant, the officers, hey, I'll be over here if you need me.
Right.
Or I'll be in my car around the corner if you need me. I'll be right there.
Yeah.
And so that gives them the comfort of knowing, hey, the supervisor's right here, but he's not here to tell me how to handle this call.
Yeah.
And it's a great leader once told me, go, lead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do things that you're supposed to do. I'll be back here if you need me.
Yeah.
Or in this case, go, officers, handle your business. Do what we ask you to do. We trained you. We passed you. Here you are.
Yeah.
Go do it. If you need me, call me.
That's excellent. What do you do when you're so invested in an officer and you're trying to help them and there's just not anything else you can do to save their career? They're spiraling. They're not going to be a cop anymore. And you are desperately trying to intervene and prevent that from happening. But how do you disengage from somebody that you've gone to the mat, you've got all intertwined in all of their drama and their business? How do you extricate yourself from that?
Well, first of all, hopefully your superior has armed you with their support of where you're going. So you're going to have those conversations along the way to where you're going to be getting advice from someone that has dealt with this before. Because a new sergeant, that's very tough. Personnel issues are very awkward because that's not one you've ever dealt with. Yeah. You've handled domestics, you've handled crashes, you've handled homicides, but you haven't handled a personnel issue before. Yeah. And so you want to have those conversations frequently with your superior, whatever rank that might be. When it comes time and you know it's time, oftentimes we're going to ask the sergeant, what do you think? And they're also the boots on the ground with the front row seat to what's been going on.
Yeah. Is this officer salvageable?
Right. And their opinion matters, that new sergeant opinion matters, that they need to tell us. I've done everything. Documentation, when you start getting into the end game, what I call the end game.
Yeah.
Documentation is very important. Honest evaluations are very important. And so, and that'll often happen. You like somebody, you're trying to help somebody. Well, I'm going to give them a good eval and try to pump them up. Yeah, well, what if you get deposed on that eval 2 years later? That's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So early on, and in that situation you're describing, they will have to cut it off at some point and make a recommendation, or at least give an opinion. Mm-hmm. So again, planting those seeds, documenting early on, doing everything you can. I tried this, I tried that. Then after that, you have to, I've done everything I can. Now, going down to the officer, you be honest with them. Tell them, this is where we're going. I'm trying to help you.
Doing everything I can to save your career.
And be honest with them. Be transparent. We are trying everything we can. Everyone up to the chief or the sheriff is trying to keep you, but you're doing this. You have to be honest with them. And if you're honest and transparent, even at my rank, talking to officers, they know I'm going to be honest and transparent with them. And if I can't, at least tell them.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, I can't tell you that.
Yeah.
Or I'll tell them, I don't know that answer. That's the first I've heard of that. I'll find an answer for you.
Yeah.
You be honest with them. So regardless of the rank. So advice to a young sergeant is be honest with that person. And when it comes to it, look, officer such and such, we are in the end game here. We are doing everything we can. This could be the end. You either have to change or here's going to be the recommendation.
Yeah.
And I've had those situations in my career, whether I've had to give the bad news or I've been up the chain of command advising the young captain or sergeant, hey, here's where we're going with this, and here's how we're going to bring this to a close.
Yeah. And unfortunately, you cannot save every officer. There are people who got into law enforcement that maybe never should have, and maybe they just didn't have the personality or the coping mechanisms to really be successful in this career, and you cannot save every one of them. And so at some point, your loyalty to them, your heartfelt compassion for them has to come to an end. There has to be a boundary, and you have to respect that, and it's good. There's going to be a time to let them go.
Right.
And that's tough.
Right. And what helps you is, as the young sergeant or the commander or whoever, what helps you is, again, having that team, having that oversight of a group, because you're now responsible for when that officer that shouldn't be here is now on that call with that officer that is good, and you are keeping them. That officer now has to worry about the other officer.
Yeah.
And you haven't gotten rid of them yet. And now it's a burden on the
liability.
team. It's a liability on the team.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at you and say, what are you doing to us? Why is this person still here? I'm having to carry their load as well.
Yeah.
Or even worse, I now have to have officer safety for them.
Right.
And
because they're a
I
liability.
now have to worry about the bad guy and my partner.
Yeah.
I need your help, because the officer's going, I can't fire him.
Yeah.
You got to do something.
Yeah. So ultimately, communicating honestly, both up the chain of command and down the chain of command, is going to be what helps this.
Right.
Makes it a little bit more tolerable, a little easier to do.
And a young sergeant should remember, a veteran commander will see right through you if you are haloing them, if you are covering for them.
Yeah. Don't torpedo your own career for the sake of a person who's not going to be a cop a year from now anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then that is the case where you go, that I am disappointed in you saying that, and I think less of you for covering for them, because I could see around you and see we got a problem here, but yet you're misreporting to me that their behavior is not what it really is. So now I think less of you.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
Because that sticks with you for a while, and you have to.
That can be hard to shake.
It's hard to shake, and you're going to have to get lucky with some scenarios where you're able to shake it.
Right.
And those have to come your way.
Yeah. You may not have full control over whether or not you get to ever work that off. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So there has to be honesty. It's kind of the theme of this whole thing: honesty, transparency, respect, up and down the seniority chain, up and down the chain of command. Those are the things that will guide you right down the middle of a career, and not leaning one way or the other. Just go right down the middle.
Without running in the ditch.
Without running in the ditch. Yeah. Be a team player wherever you go. And even if you're the commander of a midnight shift by yourself, you still need to be a team player with the other captains or the other commander of other shifts. And when you're not there, somebody else is holding up. Team players, honesty, transparency, and respect.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
I really appreciate Ryan's eagerness to jump right in and help me produce content on short notice. I explained that I had a request for tips and encouragement for new sergeants, and that the request came from the podcast audience. And Ryan didn't even hesitate to offer his help. Even as a major, he's keenly interested in developing young leaders and helping the LEO community everywhere to improve. Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate the example you set. I'm hoping that you'll hit the share button in your podcast app and send this episode to the group chat that you have with your fellow officers. Whatever is wrong with your agency's culture, fixing the fly in the ointment can start by letting good conversations like these lead to self-reflection, new conversations, and a shared commitment to improve among the members of your team. Don't let cynicism tell you that nothing can get better and that no one can learn and improve. It's just not true. And if you're a good cop who's starting to accumulate some wisdom and maturity, please consider testing for promotion. The only way to prevent the next knucklehead sergeant in your department is for you to step up and get ranked higher on the promotion list. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain. Happy birthday! The Hey Chaplain podcast turns 2 years old, and we have a special treat for you. We're doing follow-ups and business checks with some of our past guests. Who has been promoted, who's moved into a new role, and who has kept plugging away doing the good work that they've always done. we catch up with some of your favorite guests to get a few updates and have a few laughs. This episode will be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for you to hear it. That'll be episode 57, Follow-Ups and Business Checks, the Hey Chaplain second anniversary episode. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guest and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.